Meghan and Harry's talks about a possible reconciliation with King Charles at Highgrove allegedly went off track. According to online chatter, Meghan Markle was seen leaving the Highgrove residence just 47 minutes after meeting the king, and the hoped-for reset seemed to fall apart before it really even got started. So what actually happened here? Stick with it to the end, because the way it unfolded may be more surprising than it first looked.
Meghan Markle felt humiliated on Prince Harry's most recent UK trip, and that the trip turned into a nightmare, forcing Markle and her children to return home to California earlier than they had hoped.
After speculation spread that Meghan Markle might not be coming to the United Kingdom because taxpayer-funded security had not been approved for her and her young family, the narrative suddenly shifted. Reports then started circulating that she had arrived in the UK with her young family to see the king and possibly take the first step toward reconciliation.
Nullifies her claims, Harry's claims that they can't possibly return to the United Kingdom without royal security because the press won't leave them alone.
According to online chatter, the king was said to be pleased by that development, especially since he reportedly had not seen his own grandchildren for several years. For many people following the story, this seemed like the ideal moment for him to spend time with his son and the children. Some viewers even imagined he may have been hoping to show Archie and Lilibet around and introduce them to places they had not experienced while growing up in Montecito. But that is exactly why people started paying such close attention to every little detail around the meeting. When a possible reunion involves the royal family, even the smallest timing change can set off a wave of speculation online. Some viewers began reading Meghan's quick exit as a sign that things may not have gone as smoothly as hoped, while others said it could simply have been a brief, carefully managed visit with no dramatic meaning attached. That split in reactions is part of what kept the story moving so fast. On one side, there were people hoping this was the beginning of a calmer chapter, with family tension finally easing in a way everyone could see. On the other side, critics questioned whether the whole situation had been overhyped from the start, especially given how much attention had already built up around the security issue and her reported arrival. So instead of a simple family visit, the moment turned into a fresh round of online debate, with viewers parsing body language, timing, and the broader message behind the trip. And once that kind of discussion starts, it rarely stays quiet for long.
This is the first time that the king has actually met his granddaughter and grandson from Prince Harry's side of the family since the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee all the way back in June 2022. And if you were to ask me on Monday afternoon whether I thought this meeting would take place, I would have told you absolutely no chance.
However, things reportedly did not unfold the way many people expected. Instead of a warm family reunion, the meeting was described as feeling more like an official business sit-down than a relaxed moment between close relatives. Some reports suggested it may have reflected that firm boundaries were still very much in place. Rather than signaling a clear return to family closeness, the whole atmosphere seemed to center more on protocol, caution, and keeping some distance.
It's been reported that Markle's frustrations came from the couple not receiving taxpayer-funded security and not being allowed to stay at Buckingham Palace.
But this is where things start to get more interesting. According to online chatter, once Meghan realized the meeting was not the warm family reunion she may have been expecting, but instead a very direct conversation about boundaries and expectations, she was said to be deeply frustrated. She may have gone in hoping for open arms, only to leave with a very clear sense that the lines had already been drawn. The message, as people discussed it, was that the family had moved forward, and any future return would come with very specific conditions attached. That, apparently, was not the outcome she had in mind.
This trip to the UK, there was a bit of will they, won't they? Harry goes by himself, and then suddenly Meghan Markle with the kids in they trot as well. But there have been some reports that the family reunion that they had with the King and the Queen may have not gone as planned for Meghan. There are some suggestions that it probably wasn't warm and fuzzy. I can't imagine why.
When Meghan and Harry reportedly arrived at Highgrove, Harry may have expected to step inside and see his father right away after such a long stretch apart. Instead, reports suggest they were asked to wait while final arrangements were handled and the necessary royal protocols were put in place before the meeting could officially begin. That, at least, is how many people online read the moment, as it gave off the impression that they were not really steering the situation and that the pace was being set elsewhere. and that detail is exactly why the reaction online kept building. To a lot of viewers, the waiting itself was read as part of the message, like a quiet reminder that this was not going to be a casual catch-up, no matter how much people hoped it might be. Others pushed back and said the delay could have been nothing more than standard royal scheduling, the kind of thing that happens when formal arrangements are still being handled behind the scenes. Still, the wider conversation kept circling back to the same point. This was not being treated like a simple family visit. Every pause, every timing choice, and every small movement seemed to feed the idea that the meeting was tightly controlled and carefully managed. That is why so many people online kept dissecting it, because once a story starts looking like protocol over personal warmth, the public naturally starts reading between the lines. And from there, the tension only seemed to sharpen, with people wondering what that kind of atmosphere might mean for anything that comes next.
For the most part, he was rejected. And the nightmare wasn't just the trip. It was discovering that the privilege of royalty, doesn't automatically survive after you quit your job.
You could almost picture the disappointment setting in right away. They may have expected that once they arrived, they would be welcomed straight into the residence to see the king, but that is not how things reportedly played out. Instead, the palace seemed focused on handling everything by its own procedures, step by step. To many people following the story online, it gave the impression that the institution was making one thing clear: the rules would be set by the palace, not by the Sussexes.
Well, Meghan is furious because she hasn't done everything she wanted. When they knew they were going to come to the UK and London, she sent a list of what she wanted done for her at Buckingham Palace. Can you believe that? But they didn't go to a palace. They went to a home, and she didn't get what she wanted.
Within just 47 minutes, Meghan was reportedly seen leaving the Highgrove residence, and online observers said she appeared visibly disappointed. Meanwhile, reports suggested the king was said to be glad to finally see his grandchildren after so many years, but there seemed to be very little warmth in the exchange, and no real breakthrough came out of it. According to the chatter, the meeting ended with little more than polite greetings and formal courtesies before everyone headed in different directions, without even taking a single photo.
Now, on a personal note, Grant, I'm happy that the king was able to spend time with his grandchildren. But do you think the Sussexes will be disappointed that they did not get a photograph of this meeting, given that it would enhance their brand?
Meghan and the children reportedly left soon after the Highgrove meeting, while Harry stayed in the UK for Invictus preparations. And during the whole visit, Meghan was notably absent from any public appearances. According to online discussion, the reason was straightforward. Some people speculated that she may have wanted to avoid being booed. There were also claims online that gifts tied to her as-ever lifestyle brand were not exactly received with enthusiasm. Those claims suggested Meghan may have felt disappointed and pushed to the side. She may have expected a much warmer welcome after returning to the United Kingdom, but instead, some viewers believe she was reminded that the public had not moved on from the tensions surrounding the royal family. For many following the story, that was the part that stood out most, because it seemed to underline just how uneasy the atmosphere around the visit had become. And that is why the online conversation did not just fade out after the visit ended. For a lot of people watching from the outside, the real story was not only who showed up, but how tightly everything seemed to be controlled from start to finish. That kind of setup can make even the smallest detail feel loaded, and once that happens, social media tends to run with it. Some viewers argued that the whole episode said more about the state of the relationship than any official statement ever could. Others were more cautious, pointing out that royal visits often come with strict planning, limited time, and very little room for spontaneity. Still, the tone of the discussion made one thing obvious: people were not treating this as a routine family moment. Instead, the public reaction kept framing it as another example of how fragile things still appear around the royal circle. When a meeting leaves behind more questions than clarity, speculation fills the gap quickly, and that is exactly what happened here. The atmosphere around the visit became just as important as the visit itself, and that is what kept the story moving forward.
The Sussexes with their children were able to go to Highgrove. They flew into the country. They go to Highgrove perhaps other parts of the UK as well, and then they go back home. Does it make a mockery of their demands for 24/7 royal security, given that that was not provided?
Meghan may have expected that the meeting would go on much longer, especially since King Charles had not seen his grandchildren in several years. For many people following the story, it looked like this could have been a real chance to reconnect as a family, at least for a moment. Instead, the meeting was said to have lasted less than an hour, and that short time quickly became one of the biggest talking points online. To a lot of royal watchers, the brief visit suggested that some major issues were still far from being worked out. Rather than giving the impression of a family that had fully moved past its tensions, the whole exchange seemed to show that there was still a long road ahead before any real reconciliation could even begin.
Sped Prince Harry, Meghan Markle and the two children to see their grandfather. We're not quite sure how long it lasted. Some people are saying an hour, some are saying more. The fallout from it has been we're all sitting waiting for it to be leaked. Nothing so far. Apparently William was appalled. The following day, Harry looked like the cat that got the cream, because you and I both know that the Sussex brand's dead now, isn't it, anywhere in the world, unless they can actually prove to have some link still with the very family they spend their entire life slagging off.
People also started analyzing Meghan's body language as she left Highgrove. Some viewers felt she did not seem like someone coming out of a successful family reunion. Instead of looking relaxed or relieved, online comments described her as appearing disappointed and frustrated. Another detail that drew attention was the lack of any official family photograph after the meeting. Usually, if a major reconciliation had really taken place, many people expected at least one formal picture to mark the moment. But nothing like that was released, and soon after, some reports suggested Meghan and the children were getting ready to return to the United States. That only added to the speculation that the meeting may not have delivered the outcome Meghan had hoped for.
She wanted the king's embrace. And if she got that seal of approval, that good housekeeping seal of approval, she would be able to monetize that. She would be able to use that to her advantage. And the palace was very smart on this one.
Reports also suggested that King Charles was being especially cautious because of the lingering tension between Harry and Prince William, along with the already strained dynamic between Harry and Queen Camilla. In that version of events, the king was said to be in a difficult position. On one side, he would naturally want to spend time with his grandchildren. On the other, he reportedly had to weigh the wider royal family and think about how any reconciliation might affect those already delicate relationships. Prince William and Harry are still widely believed to have unresolved differences, and Harry's remarks about Queen Camilla in his memoir Spare only seem to add more pressure to the situation, according to online discussion. And that is exactly why the reactions kept building instead of settling down. Once people started reading into the timing, the body language, and the missing photo, the visit stopped looking like a simple family check-in and started looking like a test that nobody could fully explain. For commenters online, every small detail seemed to hint at a much bigger tension sitting just below the surface. That is also why the discussion kept drifting beyond the meeting itself. It was not only about whether the visit happened, but what it seemed to say about the larger state of things behind palace walls. When a moment like that ends without a clear public takeaway, people naturally fill in the blanks, and in this case, the blanks became the main story. So even though the trip itself was brief, the reaction around it kept expanding. For some viewers, the short duration, the careful setup, and the lack of a visible family moment all pointed in the same direction. For others, it was simply another example of how tightly controlled royal interactions can be. Either way, the conversation was no longer about a casual visit. It had turned into a symbol of how complicated the wider family situation still appears.
I don't think William was very happy. I don't think the Queen was very happy, but I'll tell you why I think it's clever. And I thought about this overnight because I don't know much else to do because I don't sleep. The son has been emotionally blackmailing him and wants to deal and titles before the king passes. That's me being very straight and very honest with everybody, because there isn't a chance in hell that William will ever thaw. That's my opinion. So the king was under that sort of pressure, didn't want to be criticised for not seeing his grandchildren.
Titles before the king passes. That is me being completely direct and honest with everyone, because there is not a clear path in, and there is little sign that William will ever fully thaw, at least in my view. That was the pressure surrounding the king. He reportedly did not want to be criticized for missing time with his grandchildren, and with all those factors in play, It was said that he approached the meeting very carefully. Instead of letting emotions take over, the meeting reportedly followed a formal structure with clear limits. Some people felt that was probably the smartest move, because the king carries responsibilities not just as a father, but also as the head of the monarchy. Any choice he makes can affect not only his family, but the institution he represents. Because of that, many believed he wanted to avoid giving the impression that every disagreement had suddenly disappeared overnight. Supporters of Harry and Meghan welcomed the fact that the meeting happened at all, seeing it as a small but meaningful first step toward healing the family divide. Even so, others felt the meeting did not lead to the big breakthrough many had been expecting. The Sussexes reportedly hoped it would open the door to rebuilding stronger ties with the royal family, but from what followed afterward, that result did not seem to come through. Instead, the meeting seemed to wrap up with everyone still in roughly the same place as before, which only made the online speculation continue.
That she didn't exactly get what she wants, and she certainly didn't win. A lot of us were frightened that Meghan would be able to manipulate the king, but I think in this instance, nothing has changed. They met for an hour and a half, they had tea, they talked about stuff that had no big relevance, small talk. There's no one better than the royal family for making chit-chat. If ever you've been around the royals, they say nothing. It's like cotton candy. They just talk and they don't say anything. And so he can sit there for an hour and a half and say absolutely nothing.
It's an art form.
So it would be fair to say that Meghan's first visit in years left many people underwhelmed, since there were no major announcements, no public display of unity, and no clear sign that the long-running family tensions had been worked out. To viewers following the discussion online, the moment did not seem to deliver the kind of breakthrough some had been hoping for. In the end, it mostly looked like a brief chance for King Charles to spend a little time with his grandchildren after years apart. Outside of that, very little seemed to shift, and the wider situation appeared to remain much the same. And that, more than anything, is why people kept talking about it. When a royal moment ends with no clear public signal, the silence tends to say as much as the meeting itself, at least in the eyes of online commentators. The brief nature of the visit, the tightly managed setup, and the absence of any obvious public warmth made the whole thing feel carefully contained rather than openly resolved. That is where the speculation really took off, because viewers were not just reacting to one conversation, they were reacting to what the conversation seemed to represent. For some, it suggested the family may still be trying to find a workable middle ground. For others, it looked like proof that the distance is still there, even if everyone involved is trying to keep things polished in public. So the focus shifted from the visit itself to the larger question hanging over it, whether moments like this are signs of progress or just brief pauses in a much bigger rift. And that is exactly why the discussion stayed alive long after the meeting ended.
To press, he would love to have a relationship with these grandchildren. He doesn't. They've Skyped, they've made some phone calls, but this wasn't what they wanted. They would love to be able to fix this on a family level, Meghan, but that's what the problem is here. Harry and Meghan are not interested in fixing the family. They want a professional relationship. It's about the money. It's about the association to royalty. It's about being close to power.
The meeting could also have an effect on the Invictus Games. Harry has spent years building that competition, and many people still strongly connect him with it. And so, some online commentators believe the ongoing family tension could make senior members of the royal family less likely to publicly align themselves with events tied to Harry. Some reports suggest the palace is still being careful, since nearly every appearance involving Harry and Meghan tends to draw fresh debate and controversy online. Because of that, future invitations or any visible public support from senior royals may stay limited for now, at least according to the current chatter.
Harry and the king to have sorted out their relationship, because you would expect the king to go to something like the opening of the Invictus Games next year. It would be standard, almost normal royal protocol.
For Meghan, this visit seemed set up to be the big turning point, a chance at a royal reset, a few carefully managed photos, and maybe even a joint statement that some observers thought could have taken over the internet and reminded everyone the Sussexes still had public weight. Instead, the meeting at Highgrove stayed quiet and ended fast. There were no photos released, no statement, no post, and nothing from the palace confirming it in any public way. For someone who traveled to the UK with her young family and likely expected at least some visible sign of a warmer reception, leaving with no clear public takeaway at all, had to feel disappointing. No Instagram-ready moment, no headline-making reveal, just a quiet drive back toward the airport.
And so she desperately wanted a photograph. We know the world we live in. We know the world of social media. We want to see a picture of the king, of Meghan, of the children, of Harry, of everybody smiling. The palace said absolutely not. This is not a state visit. This is not even an official visit. This is a family visit. And so there's no photographs.
At the end of the day, one question is still hanging in the air. Can the relationship between the Sussexes and the royal family really be repaired? And what would Harry and Meghan need to do to make that happen? If the quiet Highgrove meeting suggested anything, it is that the road ahead still looks complicated. Like, subscribe, share, and comment with your thoughts. And see you on the next one.